sinking our teeth into a rather controversial one. Might be a little murky, and perhaps it's going to rest largely on what has been done so far, and perhaps suggestions that should be made to the president. I say it's murky because a number of columnists have been writing on this. If you've been reading the papers of recent, you see a number of columnists telling Mr. President, let's take a look at your cabinet, let's take a look at or some suggestions for you, Mr. President, as you constitute a new cabinet. Well, should we say we're about to have our own version of that this morning with Mr. Wale Oluwade, who is a management consultant. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, Marco. Thank you.
It's good to see you again.
Same here.
Well, you are a management consultant, and if you're going to be talking to Mr. President this morning, or advising him on who to appoint or who not to appoint into his cabinet, what are some of the criteria that you'll be looking for in a minister to serve the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
First, I think Nigeria is a blessed nation with humongous abundance human resources. All over the world, Nigerians are doing great things all over the world, locally and in diaspora. So we're not short of talent or people with capacity, demonstrable capacity. So, but the challenge, for national development, implementation or execution of our plans has always been, having people with certain qualities. Number one, patriotism, because even if you have the best skills, and you're capable, but you're not patriotic, you won't deliver. So patriotism is key. And how do you measure patriotism?
That's a very good question.
Fantastic question. The taste of the pudding is in the eating. So until you sit down there, and then we measure, what your output, maybe 6 months. And I'll talk about that.
So you have to have taken the job for us to measure your level of patriotism.
To measure patriotism. But then the second point is capacity, skills acquisition. So, and how do you measure that? It comes by recruitment process that is merit-driven. But you and I know, Malkwe, that our recruitment process, especially in public offices, even in our democracy, how do we recruit leaders in our democratic process? Sentiments, tribalism, religious sentiments. So we put aside merit on the altar of. We sacrifice merit on the altar of sentiments and expediency. And there is no nation. It's worth repeating, even at the risk of sounding monotonous or boring, that without people with capacity, people who know what they do, governance is not just the nut and the bolt. It requires some level of serious, cerebral capacity. You must be one who understands the role of public service. Mm-hmm. So you're coming into a public service, you must understand. Take the naughty issue of social intervention program. It's meant to be a stopgap. It's meant to be something to tide the poor, extreme poor, pending when they get jobs. So it's not meant to be something that is forever, or that people, perpetually are there and they're receiving every year trader money, market money, or conditional cash transfers. If you have ministers or DGs or special advisors who are a bit cerebral, apart from having the skills, they would know that the way to go about eradicating poverty in Nigeria is to go back to the grassroots. And deal with the issues of access to education, access to healthcare, access to housing, access to jobs, creating jobs. And you do that at the grassroots because, like I said last time I was here, you don't build a nation from the top. You build a nation from the bottom.
So you're talking about capacity and not sacrificing merit on the altar of sentiment.
Yeah.
But
so you recruit people based on merit.
We must remember that the president was elected based on the work that a number of people did for him politically. Yeah. And oftentimes there's always that, let's say, struggle to balance what people deserve politically and what they deserve in terms of what they can bring to the table, in terms of capacity, so to speak. The last time it took the president close to 6 months,
over 6 months,
to determine that cabinet. I think a lot of Nigerians were very disappointed
at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, when he brought out the list, because he said you could have brought out this list
from day one.
Yeah, so I think this time around, a lot of people will expect that the president will be bringing out his list as soon as possible. How much time are you giving? How much time are you giving him?
I mean, I would expect the list to be announced maybe next week, Monday.
Next week, Monday.
It's sworn in tomorrow, so I would expect finishing touches we put to the list, and by next week, Monday. You know,
by Monday we should have a list of ministers.
We should have a list of ministers because, I mean, the elections were concluded February 23rd. He was given the certificate of return, I mean, maybe the week after. So he had all that time, you know, to plan, to identify, you know, and scout for the persons that would, man this ministry. So he didn't just win the elections last week. You know, he's had time, over 2 months now, you know, to plan, you know. So, and I mean, I'm a bit skeptical that would happen because, I mean, the president, you know, takes his time to do his own thing, you know, but we don't have that time. We don't have the luxury of time. You know, we need to hit the ground running and do some things that ought to have been done, we're saying 40 years, 50 years, in arrears, you know. So the president does not have the time. Identify these people, give them their marching orders. But beyond recruitment, you know, of people based on merit, is to give men smart goals. Because the tragedy of, as a management consultant, what I see in my interface with the public service in Nigeria, you have a public service. And I'm not even just talking about the political heads, that's the DGs or ministers. I'm saying from the permanent secretaries, the directors, deputy directors, assistant directors down. No accountability because they have no goals. You know, so how do you measure performance? I mean, you listen to the president when he was having, the valedictory, session with the ministers. The president said, you know, to the consternation, I'm sure, most of Nigerians, that all of you must be proud of your having put in your best in the service of your fatherland, and you have been able to defeat Boko Haram, you know, and then provide food security, I think, and I was thinking, in what universe is the president living? Because this can't be Nigeria. The president definitely can't be speaking about this same Nigeria, that's insecurity, banditry in the president's home state. There isn't going to be inauguration publicly of the state governor. Now, there's not going to be Salah celebrations.
That's not because it's not safe enough. They say it's because of the mood of the state. I mean, they think it will be insensitive to have such loud celebrations.
I beg to differ with you.
That's what they have said. I mean, that the state government released released statements
at the least, we're educated.
You think it's a lie?
Well, I wouldn't use that word, but I think that is so untrue. That is so far from the truth. The Minister for Agric went to Katsina to speak to them about agriculture and all of that. And what did the Emir of Katsina say to the Emir of Daura? The president's hometown, not just the state now, said to him, please, can you take this message back to the president that we're unsafe? Don't come here talking about agriculture when we can't even go to the farms.
So perhaps indeed,
yes,
this is without prejudice, but some people will say that it's a mark of respect from the, even if they could celebrate, that they, you know, hold the drums or say that we're a little somber, because it will be really insensitive if a state is in the middle of something and, you know, they are in the middle of celebrations.
Is that why you inaugurate a governor in the government house?
What's wrong with that?
Well, I think that's novel.
Even from what we hear, the celebrations for Mr. President's
will be on June 12th. Yes.
No, I mean
the inauguration will be tomorrow, but the celebrations will be on June 12th.
So what's wrong with that?
Nothing is wrong with that. But okay, let's not deviate from the issue.
Yeah, let's talk about ministers.
So haven't brought them in based on a purely merit-driven process, you know. And I liked your point that you made about balancing, settling political IOUs and all of that. But you see, you know, your idea and my idea of political IOUs, you know, in Nigeria is about, you know, bringing in people into government to recover their whatever they expended. That is corruption. The whole idea of public service is about service to the fatherland. Tangible service. Sacrificial service.
I think we've seen this debate going on
Yeah.
and on. People have said, who is a technocrat? A lot of them have argued that they are technocrats in their field. They've chosen to go into the field of politics. It doesn't mean that they have lost capacity in whatever it is that they know how to do.
Fantastic. So why is the country so, why are we like this?
Why are we like how?
Because the point is, you come in on a merit-driven process, then you have smart goals. You have, measurable, you are given metrics by which your output is measured. If that all, there isn't any, to the best of my knowledge.
So the president should set targets for his ministers?
Absolutely, Mankwe. For instance, Minister for Power. I love Babatunde Fashola, my kind of leader Nigeria deserves. Someone like, Peter Obi, former Governor Peter Obi. Exceptionally capable individuals. The kind of transformational leaders we would have. But did you see the Fashola that governed Lagos? Totally different. That version is not the version that I am saying at the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. And I made an excuse for him that perhaps it was overburdened with these 3 huge, ministries. So, if you have a minister for power, for instance, and I am the president, or I'm advising the president, I would say to the president, so you give this man a target, minimum 500 megawatts per annum, that you are the minister for power. I need 500 megawatts of electricity per annum from you. Without doing that, at the end of the year, give me just give me an advance copy of your resignation letter. That is how you set time, because you are able to benchmark as it is. Do you know, Mark, we're still going around 3,000 megawatts? Sometimes it comes, there's a total systems collapse.
The minister will disagree with you. He says the transmission company of Nigeria is able to wheel 7,000 megawatts. These are his words, not mine. 7,000 megawatts of electricity. Now, what the distribution companies get is another kettle.
So what concerns you, Mark? No, hold on. Mark, what concerns you and I? What concerns the industrialists, the small-scale businesses, the barbing salon, the person frying something, the bakery? What concerns them? Is it generation? It's transmission. I want to see the bulb. I want to see the lights.
Transmission or distribution?
Distribution. I want to see that when I put on my switch, there's lights. So I'm not interested in, we have installed capacity of maybe 7,000 tons. No, what is distributed to the homes, to the factories, to the industries. So you give all these ministers, and mind you, while we're on it, America is a 22 trillion economy. And they have 15 ministers, cabinet ministers. 15.
So we're too many. We have too many ministers.
Absolutely.
But that's what the Constitution says. We have to.
So why can't we fix this Constitution? Why do you have, you have a House of Reps from every federal constituency. You have a senator representing 3 senatorial districts, and then you have local governments. So you have all these people representing all these parts of Nigeria. And then these same drafters of the Constitution deemed it fit that we should still have ministers from every state.
Let me bring out one controversy that came up recently. Only recently had caused to interview the Minister of State for Agriculture, Heineken Lokoburi, and I said, well, he is Minister of State. How do you justify a minister and a Minister of State? And he says they're all ministers. There's no junior minister, there's no senior minister.
That's not true.
That's not true?
Yeah.
Well, he says our Constitution doesn't provide for that. They are all ministers of the Federal Republic. They earn the same salaries, and there is no provision for a Minister of State.
The question to him, and I watched that program, by the way, was, so what's your job schedule? What do you do?
They have their own schedules.
Because except, I don't know whether it was the president that did it for the transportation ministry, or it was the minister, the substantive minister, that carved out aviation for Hadi Sirika, and he retained, road transport, marine transport, and whatever. If you don't have that, you're always going to have, we've been in this city, there was a substantive minister of FCT, and the minister for state, and they always had clashes.
No, because let us remember that at the beginning of this administration, as the 2015 coming of President Muhammadu Buhari, there was an attempt to try to merge ministries and make them more efficient, so to speak. That's when we saw the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. That's when we saw that aviation was taken away as a ministry and put under the Ministry of Transport. We saw attempts to try and make ministries more compact and the ones that are related to bring them under one roof. But don't you think that that could have created some friction, perhaps between ministers who are appointed? If some ministers believe that there is nothing like a minister of state, I'm not the junior minister, I'm a minister very much like the substantive minister is, could that create friction within and amongst ministers?
Absolutely. And that's why I said, using the example of the United States, where incidentally we borrowed this presidential style democracy we're practicing. America is a 22 trillion economy, and they have 15 ministers. They call them secretaries. 15. And we have 36 mandatory and then 6 others, that must represent each of the geopoliticals, making 42. Now, the point is...
That's not compulsory.
It's not compulsory, but the 36 are compulsory.
Yes, 36 are compulsory.
And the point is, why? We don't need that. Because there is resources, so you have waste, duplication of functions.
But when we have so much work to do, should we complain about the number of people we employ to do that?
Where's the work to be done, Maokwe? The grassroots. That's the point, and I said it earlier, you don't build a nation. Everybody's looking up to the federal government to build Nigeria, to fix the problems of Nigeria. Look at the social intervention program again, I go back to it. The president's wife came out to say, the worst kept secret, it's failed, it's not effective, it's not successful. I know there's a rebuttal by the woman.
Yes, and one would say that there's definitely merit to it. When you look at the number of people who are poor vis-a-vis the number of people whom they've affected, it would seem like a drop in the ocean.
Because 500 billion over 3 years, it's not going to scratch it, it's not going to move the needle. We need to be doing like 1 trillion naira every year and that's in the life of this administration. And then another 4 years, we ramp it up maybe to 2 trillion and all of that, and we take it down to the grassroots. Okay,
I'm going to ask you now, I understand that we have to go, and this is a very tricky one. Which ministers would you like to return if the president, would you like the president to reappoint people from this cabinet? Or if he says, I want to retain this cabinet for my next administration, how would you feel about that?
Not wholesale. I would think Babatunde Fashola should be retained. He's a capable person and he's sound, So, but give him
that's one person.
Just one person. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Minister for Trade. I think he has some bright ideas concerning special economic zones. So we could give him, a trial. But in large parts, most of these ministers have been largely underwhelming. To be fair, they've been underwhelming. They've been so. Nothing spectacular to write about them, most of them. Maybe because they've been round pegs and square holes, I don't know, but maybe 2 or 3 of them. The rest, should be asked to leave. Some of them are actually big-time politicians. We have not even inaugurated the next administration. They're already projecting into 2023. People like that should be asked to go so that they could face the politics. Minister for Transport, specifically.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it. I know that there will definitely be controversy on that one.
Yeah, I know.
And for as many people as you ask, you will definitely get as many opinions. But there's definitely work to be done in constituting the president's cabinet. Thank you always for honoring us on Sunrise. Mr. Luwade is a management consultant.